and where down we go. Oh, 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 where down we go. Oh, 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 oh. So where down we go. Oh, 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 way down we go. Oh, you let your feet run wild. Thomas, come as we all go down. Yeah, but for the folk who my, do you dare to look them right in the eyes? Yeah. Oh, 'cause they will run you down, down to the door. Yeah, someday we'll run you down.
We'll be getting started in about 30 seconds time.
And they will run you down to your core. Yeah, till you can't grow no more. And where down we go. Oh, 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 where down we go. Oh, oh, oh. Say where down we go. Oh, 'cause they will run you down to your car. Oh, way down we go.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Trading Spaces. We've jumped on live at an interesting time in the market. We've just dropped below 100k. But what me and Den are here today to talk to you about is reasons to be bullish and where there are signs of strength, where's some hopium for everyone listening. So we're going to talk a little bit around what got us to where we are today, some of the main drivers of that. We're going to obviously open up and dig in through some of the majors and some of the different charts, a few different alts, and we have a few different things that we're going to be digging into, but hopefully this is going to be really helpful for all of you looking at the charts today and through last night and wondering what you do next. But before we get into all of that, a very quick disclaimer. This is, of course, not financial advice. All of the information that we share is for educational purposes only. Den, how you doing?
Hello, friends. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great, just living the dream over here.
Did the intro song actually say "Down We Go," or was it just me?
I did wonder maybe we should have had a slightly different intro song, but
I was gonna say that was the most depressing intro song I think we ever had. Maybe bad timing.
we can the tone of the intro music has to correlate with the number of green candles that we see, and unfortunately we dropped below a barrier here. Well, listen, we've got a lot to go through. We haven't got a whole lot of time to go through it. Why don't we just bring up the charts while you're doing that, Dan? I thought I would just start, as I often do, with digging in a little bit more on the macro side, very briefly, before we dig into the charts, because I think it's some really important talking points that we have as to why, especially since the start of this month, we've definitely seen more bearish price action, a lot more jitters in markets across the board, but also why I certainly think that while it's easy to be bearish looking purely at price action, I think there's a lot that's much more constructive when you look at the setup for risk assets. And honestly, I think a lot of this all comes down to liquidity. And in particular, when you look at since the start of November, liquidity across the market has been extremely tight. That does not bode very well for risk assets. We still are in arguably very restrictive rate environment. Um, there's been a lot of more structural pieces. There's a lot of discussion that I'm sure many people have heard about, like, the reverse repo balance. And the something that is interesting to look at, and I'm not going to get into like the painful nerdy details here, but looking at the SOFR IORB spread, which is like the secure overnight funding rate, and the TLDR here is we saw a huge spike in the SOFR rate at the start of November, and in particular, all the way through for kind of like the first couple of days. And that actually spiked above the IORB rate, which is the interest rate on reserve balances. The net here is that really, really tightens up and shows a reduction in liquidity in the market. What we are definitely seeing, though, in the past few days, and of course, all of this is a massive lag to actually showing up in the market, is that those rates are starting to come back down and normalize a little bit. Similarly, we know from the last rate decision at the start of December, the Fed is ending quantitative tightening. So that whole QT program is going.
Yeah, December 1st, right?
December 1st, right. And actually, while I know there's been a lot of discussion of like, QE is here, like everyone, like the money printer is on. Yeah, I don't quite agree with that. There is some easing though, because the Fed is the Fed is taking some of those like mortgage securities that it's allowing to roll over, and it's putting that back in as liquidity into the treasury market. So we will see more liquidity coming in, and to be honest, this is usually how we do start to see the ramping up of easing over time. And the big piece, and I think why we are seeing the current price action today, is the rate cuts. Go back 1 month, just 1 month, and there was a 94% chance priced in the market of a 25 bips rate cut on December 10th. Last week, 67%. Today, it's 50-50. And that is really what spooked people. We've had a lack of any real data coming out from an economic point of view due to the government shutdown. So the Fed hasn't had a lot to go on. And now we're seeing more hawkish commentary by a bunch of Fed officials, in fairness, most of which are not actually FOMC voting members. So I think it's just like got everyone worried, like, oh, are we actually going to remain restrictive and things go through? The markets seem to also be in a bit of rotation. So I think right now there's just a lot of uncertainty, which has been kind of a general theme over the past month. We've been stuck today still in quite tight liquidity conditions, but everything we're moving towards is an opening up, an easing, and an injection of liquidity into markets, which is coming. It's just it takes time, and we have a few wild cards if Trump does follow through. I don't know, Den, if you saw Trump's Truth Social post around
Oh
this
God.
proposed $2,000
Yes, of
tariff
course.
dividend. It would be
Crazy.
that would
Bigger
be
than COVID, right?
bigger than
Stimmy.
COVID. I think it would
Yeah.
probably be the single biggest stimulus check in certainly US history, maybe ever. I'm not sure. Now, whether that happens or not is an extreme wild card, but I mean, if that did happen, you can imagine what that would do for pretty much all risk assets. Crypto would certainly enjoy that, but I don't think we can bank on that. But that to one side, there is a lot I think you can be positive about, and the look forward of the setup that's all of this restrictive environment that we've been in and we continue to be in is easing. It's just, I think everyone, myself included, would like to have seen the benefits of that right now and be in like a bullish Q4. And I think maybe the
Mm.
expectation and reality and of where people are at has made this feel more painful, really, than it is if we zoom out.
Yeah. I mean, it has to do with so many things, right? I think, like, in general, the markets also do not love uncertainty. And I think with stocks, being like so high and crypto already having tumbled over a while ago, people in crypto are also just scared, like, what's going to happen if stocks like really fall. Question always remains, of course, like whether that's going to happen or not. And I do agree with you that there are some things that are, to say for like a bullish end of Q4. Yeah, the charts just show us like a very clear picture, I think, and we are just in do or die territory, at least when it comes to crypto. I think like the stock side of things, maybe we should do a different stream. It's a long story, of course. But I think me and you 2 weeks ago spoke about those levels that we are kind of seeing now, and we did hopefully protect some people for longing local resistance. And we
Mm.
have now arrived at these levels, and it is going to be a very exciting weekend, I think.
Definitely. It always falls over the weekend, doesn't it, Dan? I feel like we were saying this a few weeks back. It's just we always have this kind of crazy price action coming into Friday and a weekend, and
Yes.
it's hard to know. Obviously, less liquidity in the markets at the time, what the price action is going to be. But yeah, for sure. I mean, we marked out some of those levels a couple of weeks ago. I think it was that 98K ish mark
Yeah. Yeah.
that we broke underneath last
Mm.
night and have so far been yet to reclaim that. I'm keen to get your thinking here
Yeah,
on
of course.
yeah where we think BTC is heading right now.
I mean, I think that we're just gonna find out like pretty soon. And I know that, a lot of people have been saying that for a while, but I think like these were the do or die levels that we marked out weeks ago. And if you see, like, look at this pattern here, we can see that we're kind of like this cycle repeating the same type of behavior where every time we have this topping structure consolidation dump into this 3-day 100 EMA, and we kind of even like have similar sort of bottoming out structures where we have like these nasty deviations below that EMA, and just these structures where it feels like we're gonna die in the moment, and then we kind of get like bought back up again, as you can see here with this wick, and then here as well. And I think that, yeah, like I said, we will very soon find out if this is the same situation. That's why a lot of weeks ago we marked out this level as like the Bulla's last stance. And of course, it's not a textbook. This is the real market. So it's always possible that we do see some sort of deviation or some different price action than a textbook price action would show us. But there's a lot to say for these levels. Like, let me just pull up a different chart on a daily with some more context where we can see that, we have taken out all of these lows and we're kind of like moving towards the yearly open. We have like this little structure here all the way from end of April to May. I personally am long. I had bids from 98 all the way to the yearly open, of which some have been filled and some have not. And the reason for my position is that I just think that it's either here or nowhere. So
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet on that. I think it's a beautiful trade to take. Of course, it does feel a little bit scary. I personally am of the opinion that the best trades should feel scary. So yeah, that is my position, and I think, like I said, we will find out pretty soon whether I'm wrong or right. So
Yeah,
that's
I
the
think
vibe.
this is kind of this is these are the periods for sure where you talk about high conviction trades.
Hmm.
And I think for from your perspective, taking along here, um, is your view basically, we capitulate under the yearly open, we breach down to like that kind of 92K ish mark. It's and we can't have like a clean sweep and bounce back up. You think, it's
Yeah.
probably curtains for this one.
Yeah, I do think so. I think that, as you can see here, as an email trader, you guys know I love to follow trends, but we can see that trends are not always like super clean. Like we also see here that we had quite some deviations below those daily EMAs, and the structure that we're forming here looks kind of similar. And that's kind of my point, right? That the bottoming and dumping that we're doing now does look like previous dumps in the same cycle a lot, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But I do think that we have to put in some sort of save pretty soon to make sure that it's not looking different than those previous bottoming structures. Because if it starts to just be like a different level of ugly, then that kind of invalidates my thesis that this is just a pullback before prices go higher. And I do want to say that our friend Maine, who obviously leads Breakout and works with Kraken as well, had a really good point, which I would like to highlight. And he said that he's also long from the same levels here as us,
Yeah.
me. And he said that the most interesting question right now in the market is, he said, I think that we're going to pump from here, but then the question remains like, are we pumping into like a lower high, which would, obviously look something like this probably, or are we gonna make new highs? And
Mm.
that is just, a question that no one has an answer to. But I think that it is the most important question right now, besides whether we're putting in a bottom here. Because I do think we have dumped a lot, and the levels we're coming into are super logical for a bounce, which is also, of course, like why I positioned myself like that. But after that, even if we get the bounce, the question is like, how far is that bounce? And is it just, kind of a mean reversion play?
Yeah.
Or is it actually, was this the pullback before new highs? And I don't know, I do think like a lot of the things you just said in our intro are super valuable to take into account there. It does seem like there might be some soft tailwinds there in terms
Hmm.
of the liquidity situation. But how that actually unfolds, yeah, we just have to
And
see.
and I think with a lot of things like stuff like rate cuts, for example, you have sentiment driven momentum that comes when a rate cutting cycle begins. And that's ultimately what drove us into the September all-time high. The
Mm,
actual liquidity impact of rate cuts, you don't really see typically until like structural impact on the flows isn't going to really show up for another 2 to 3 months after that cycle begins. So
yeah.
the impact of stuff like easing and even like the Fed slowing down QT, that there is a lag to all of this. I think what has become clear, not just in crypto, albeit I think one of the things that's been quite tough to manage psychologically is that crypto has felt like it's been more fragile than equity markets to bad
Yeah.
news. But I think we see that bad news is being disproportionately punished to the downside, whereas good news is not necessarily showing as
Mm,
much of an upside kind of tailwind.
yeah.
So when we get to these levels, and I think your point is really important here, which is okay, we're talking about on one side, are we calling the bottom here? But also, we've kind of been through this past month of rejection after rejection after rejection. Are we going to be able to follow through and break through on some of this?
Yeah.
But I'm curious because even, if before yesterday, really, we were chatting earlier this week, Den, and before we kind of saw this big sell off, I don't know about how you felt, but when we were trading above that 100K, to 107-ish range, it didn't feel terrible, right? Like it felt like there was at least like we weren't capitulating at the time. But I'm curious
Yeah.
on how you were feeling around that point as well.
Well, this is what I tweeted about as well. Is that of course like I assume that you're meaning like this structure here,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So I personally liked this bottoming situation because at that moment it looked good. But as an EMA trader, I was also very conscious of the fact that like we have apart from this deviation, not been able to break above our EMAs, which really shows that like the bears are in control because they're just pushing price down and the trend is a very clear resistance, which is also why I tweeted, I think it was about ETH, which is like kind of in a similar situation, that there really isn't any fun to be had on these assets if, for the bulls at least, for the bears
Yeah.
it's a different story. If you're shorting, then you are having a blast. But I think that there is no real fun to be had on these assets on the bullish side unless we like reclaim these trends. And we were not doing that. So I personally wasn't getting too excited, apart from the fact that I was like, okay, if we do break above here, then this does look like a nice bottoming structure, right? With like the higher low and all of
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it's just hard for me with the way that I look at these markets to be like excited unless we put in some reclaims here. I do think now that we're on the topic of ETH that it looks slightly better than BTC here because as you can see,
Agree.
like it hasn't made any new lows, which is exciting because
Yeah.
ETH has been like a bitch, apart from, of course, our infamous rally, but just in general, I think a lot of people were super disappointed with this the past few years, actually.
Yeah.
So, of course, this is still, like I said, super low time frame, so we really don't know. It could make new lows in 2 hours from now, who knows? But I think that right now it looks slightly stronger than BTC, which could be fun. But what I would really like to see, to just come back to that topic, is that we just, start putting in some bottom here. Reclaim our yearly open would be really important. And then we have our EMAs as clear resistance for the first
Yeah.
step. And then, of course, when we look above, we can see that this was our big level, which is also why I wasn't convinced here when we started immediately dumping below. We can really see how pivotal this level has been with these rejections here as well. So that would be kind of like the steps for me to have any conviction there of upside.
We need Tom Lee. We need him to fly in
Yeah,
like
where is he?
Superman. I know.
Honestly, sometimes I just go to his page and look at his tweets when things are like dumping super hard because I'm just so curious. Like if you put yourself out there as like a bull tart, because we can all agree he kind of is, right? I'm just so curious always. Like what's his vibe? Like what do you tweet in the moment when you're so clearly down bad?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he
Funny.
comes and saves all of us, ETH bag holders, community
Mm,
members. That would
yeah,
be
yeah.
that would be wonderful.
That would be great. Yeah, but this chart is actually super clean in my opinion.
Mm,
Like we have a lot of work to do, but the work that we have to do is clear. Also, I think on the daily it's gonna look a little messy because of my drawings, but you can also see that we had these super clean rejections from our daily 200, like
yep.
textbook PA. And right now it's just gonna have to be these reclaims and then this little square that I draw for 4 hour EMAs actually coincides with our daily ones as well. So yeah, it is just we just have to put in the work. Um yeah, that's the
Well,
vibes.
in amongst all of this, we talked. I think BTC, ETH, there's some pretty clear levels that I think everyone can be tracking to either validate or invalidate a hypothesis of going long here.
Hmm.
But there's also been in the background to this a bunch of both baffling charts and interesting charts. I think we mentioned one last episode. We have to come back to this, which is
I know what you're
Zcash.
gonna say. Yes. Oh my God.
It's
Look
it's
at
been
this. So
it's a
clean.
I know we're
Remember that we
I'm
marked out this range from like the 2018 all-time high all the way to like the lows. Look what it
It's
did.
crazy. I still have these lines in my Kraken like pro account, and I've went from them not even being visible to them showing up as like the 2018 all-time high all of a sudden becoming visible on my chart. I'm just like, when we were
Yeah.
reaching, I think it pushed past $750 at one point. At least it wicked up to there, right? And
Yeah.
I was I was thinking, where is this thing going? And it had a lot of strength through the period of time that BTC was basically just back to back rejections, really. And
Yeah,
only recently did it draw down. But even through all of this, it's a very strong looking chart.
absolutely. I mean, it's so funny to me. Like, I know there are some people in trading, not just crypto, that really hate on price action. They're like strictly fundamental. And then in my head, I'm like, how do you explain this? That this chart like reacts to levels from 4 years ago? Like, look at that.
It's
Absolutely insane to me. I mean, this has
it's
been
amazing.
like the cleanest thing to trade. And I think
Yeah.
that I also saw some people blow up short trying to short this, which I
You have
personally
just got to have a whole nother level of mentality to go in and short this. It's just one of
yeah.
those like such strong narrative plays. You're just asking to get blown up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're
Mm.
kind of betting on like it being a cabal trade, which I do
Yeah.
understand that POV.
Hmm.
But yeah, the way that this is saving itself at very logical levels, it is just such a beautiful trade. And I think like even on a 4 hour probably, yeah, look at that. So clean.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it really is. I mean, the price action's been amazing. And then we've seen, I think in this huge run up, what was that? Who was I listening to today? I was actually listening to a podcast this morning with one of the creators of Zcash, and they were mentioning that there's a Zcash DAT that I
Oh
think
wow.
the Winklevoss twins have something
Of
involvement in. I,
course.
I think I'm right on that. So I don't know. If you were looking for a top signal, maybe. Um, but it seems like there's been a lot of people, as always with narratives, chasing the beta trades on some of this
Hmm.
stuff as well. And we've seen everything kind of privacy adjacent. I mean, I opened up the Kraken app, I think this was a couple of weeks ago, and just was like, okay, let me just have a look at like the top movers. And I saw a coin that I have not really seen since 2018 in there, and it was Dash. And it was like Dash is up like 50% in a day or something like that at one point, and I just was like, okay, what the hell is going on here?
Oh my
So
God.
this is
This
an
was
equally crazy
wild.
chart.
Yeah. This is maybe even crazier than Zcash, to be honest. Look how far
Yeah.
away that high is.
My God, I
Yeah, I
remember that
mean,
2017 high, and I remember Dash in 2017 when I was really much greener in crypto back then, just being like the future of privacy payments. And I remember they went out on this like marketing campaign and had a load of merchants like accept it and stuff. But it's just, yeah, it's a pretty clean break there. Yeah,
I
I'm
mean, this
interested in
is
your take on
honestly
this.
not bad for like a beta play if BTC
Hmm.
is able to save itself here and ETH, of course, as like our altcoin queen. I think this is actually nice. Like look at how similar this looks in the sense that like to Zcash, that is, in a sense that like it is really starting to like flip those trends and now it's kind of establishing that daily trend, which is the purple. Oh, this is the 3 day. Excuse me. Yeah, this looks a little bit more washy because we just deviated, but still, I think that I actually really like this. I think if
Yeah.
if the market goes, then this is not a bad level to have some exposure here with, of course, having this be like our retrace area, then of course we have some more to work with here. But I think, yeah, this looks beautiful. Of course, it's like hard to say how sustainable these are in the sense that like, where is this are these sudden pumps coming from? Like how
Mm.
orchestrated are they? That's to me like really hard to grasp because the I don't know about you, but the Zcash thing to me felt like there's a little bit
It's
something
hard,
going
isn't
on in the
it?
back.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think, we go through these periods every cycle where there's just this one really dominant narrative that comes out of
Mm,
the blue. And
yeah.
it starts with maybe one big token. And then I don't know if you remember back in 2021 and we had like Olympus down. It was like the Ohm forks and everything after. It's just people
Yeah,
searching like what's the beta trade, but then you
yeah.
know those
But
things
those
cycle
dump
through.
harder.
Oh yeah, it's really hard
Yeah.
because they just cycle through, they dump off, and I think for this, the thing that is messing with my head with Zcash is it isn't a new narrative. It
Hmm.
like privacy was certainly, when I first got into crypto in 2016, privacy was like the main thing that was talked about. The big question I have is why now? Like, it's always privacy has always been a thing. Like, why now is everyone all of a sudden talking about privacy so much? I'm a big proponent of privacy, don't get me wrong, but it just like screams something to me where I'm like, I don't know if I want to get caught up in this, especially outside of Zcash when you get into like the beta plays
I hear
where you
you.
just know how quick the rotation to the next thing is going to be.
Hmm. Yeah, especially in this market, because I think like you said, the less liquidity there is, the less hope and good charts there
Mm,
are, the quicker the rotations are usually as well. So that's definitely something to keep into take into account. And that's why I think like, especially like I said, when the market is like this, it is not bad to just bet on the main player of the narrative, which in this
yeah.
case is Zcash, especially when there hasn't been a very clear signal that there is that actual rotation in terms of liquidity. Like there might be a rotation in terms of attention sometimes when another beta play starts pumping really hard. But if you look at the chart on Zcash, to me it is very clear that the money is still in here because we aren't losing trends, not on the daily, not on the 4 hour. It is really clear that the strength is still there. Because I know that back in the days when altcoins were fun, feels like a very long time ago. Me and my friends would often do this, where you would see like the really big inflows in certain coins. Like most of the times they were like the newer, like new and shiny things that just got listed
Mhm.
on exchanges, where you would very clearly see that the volumes on these things were like insanely high. Like they would be like multiples their market cap, like just wild stuff. And then at some point you would see on a shorter time from like the 4 hour, you would just very clearly see that suddenly they would show weakness. And often that would be like a signal that the money was rotating somewhere else. And I think that's always important to take into account, right? Especially when things are in the same buckets. For instance, the bucket here would be then privacy. And right now we're not seeing that the Zcash train has stopped moving yet, in my opinion, personally.
I
And
I
what
agree.
what that would look like to me, if it would, we of course have like this situation, if we would now start to kind of like do something like this, feel this, and then start to break down, that would kind of be a very clear signal of a weakness. Right now, we have obviously held our daily trend, we have held our macro mid range, and those are signs to me that the strength is still here.
Yeah, and it feels like this is being an area where it's just been consistently catching a bid. I
Hmm.
saw Starknet, I think ZK Sync, those ones were catching like a big like bid. I'm not sure. Like, have you been looking at Monero much, Dan?
I do have it pulled up. I think, yeah, this one's interesting as well. Although I will say that it has very clearly, is up against resistance here.
Yeah.
This is actually really beautiful, and I did not have this on my radar much
Wow.
around the mid-range, unfortunately. But this is kind of like showing you the same playbook as Zcash, in the sense that like we had that super clean high time frame range, and then we did a dip into the mid-range as support, confluent with daily EMAs, or 3-day EMAs in this case.
Hmm.
For Zcash, it was like the daily trend, but you can just see like there's something kind of supposed to hold here. Also, of course, like this little block. And we are doing everything textbook PA that we would like to see in terms of a bullish scenario here. So yeah, this looks strong, but I don't think the moment to enter this is here. Like, of course, if we can manage to break out of here, that would be like a really, really huge happening because, of course, you know, is the range. So us
Yeah.
breaking out here will be really strong, but I think like where we are now, this is in not a position to trade. But very clean, beautiful.
I did not think, if you'd have told me at the start of this year we'd be running an episode here talking about Zcash and Monero.
Oh man, yeah, you're
That
so
is
right
not
about
what I
that.
thought we would be discussing right now. But,
No,
super
no,
interesting charts.
yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a trend in the world in general, right? Going back to tradition, I feel. So
Yes.
maybe that's what's happening here. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I agree. I mean, both Zcash and Monero pumped pretty aggressively in the 2021 cycle as well, around the peak. Not to
Mm,
jinx it, but so it's not necessarily a surprise that we see that. Speaking of, because I think people are trying to find narratives here as well, and they are
desperately, yes.
desperately the like willing an altcoin season into existence right now. But I think we've talked loads through, I think everyone has talked loads this year about hype.
Yeah.
And the big story really behind hype was their buybacks. And as we saw regulatory environment softening, we've started to see really kind of like the promised land of DeFi when it first came about with, the fee switch coming on. We saw this with um, Hyperliquid. I think they've to date this year, $644 million of token buybacks, which accounts to about
Wow.
2.1% of the token supply. They are the largest. In fact, the second largest was Layer Zero, which did around 100 million, which completely flew under my radar.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
had no
yeah.
idea.
Actually, more than Pump Fund. I was looking into this yesterday. Pump Fund being the third, and then you look, and a lot of DeFi protocols have adopted this, but the probably the longest standing when fee switch discussion I've heard has been Uniswap. And this week we had Hayden, the founder of Uniswap, put together a governance proposal to officially kind of kick off voting on the Uniswap fee switch being turned on. And within that, I thought it was super interesting because they said there would be not only an ongoing buyback, which I saw a great tweet from Bread, and it was sharing like a breakdown of the estimated potential buybacks per month, and it would work out as around about, based on their proposal, $38 million
Mm,
dollars worth per month of buybacks. That's
wow.
even bigger than Hype, by the way. So it would be the biggest by quite a long way. Um,
Mm,
and it would kick off with a 100 million one-off token burn to make up for all of um, the prior years that they weren't able to do this. So I'm
wow.
interested to see. I mean, you can see this kind of little spike that happened. I think people are still like, is it going to happen? Is it not? It seems like a lot
But
of
wait,
the
when is
big
it starting? Did you say?
it is the governance proposal went this week. I think 2 days
Okay.
ago. I think it was.
Yeah.
It seems like that cherry or sorry, that carrot of a 100 million token buyback one-off piece is winning over a lot of the bigger delegates in the governance vote. But it's always hard to know because for Uniswap in particular, they've had a few failed attempts at this over the years.
Hmm.
Um, but that was in a very, very different regulatory environment. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, are they American?
yes.
Think so, right?
And
Yeah.
they had a major SEC lawsuit last year, along with the rest of us, that was then thrown out, along with MetaMask as well being another notable DeFi protocol, well, consensus. So everything's kind of lining up, but it it seems pretty interesting to me
Super
at
interesting
at
because
the
the
state
actual
it's at.
liquidity of the buybacks hasn't come in yet
No,
then because
no,
they have
nothing at
still
all
to
yet.
be decided. That is very interesting. So let's break down this chart together because I do think there's a lot to unpack here. Also nice to look at this blast from the past. This was my
Oh
first
yeah.
airdrop ever, I think. So yeah, if we look at this, we see the same as those other charts we just discussed, like Monero and Zcash. We have a very clean range on a higher time frame. Like this is slightly less high time frame because it goes back to 2024 versus years. But still, I think the range itself is very like clean and sharp. And I also see, and just for the people that are wondering why we have quarterly levels on here, the reason for that is because every range basically can be divided in its own range. So it's like a range within a range. So that's
Hmm.
why we sort of put on these quarterly levels. And I even know traders that put on like a 0.15 or 125. But what I'm seeing here is that we obviously had that a news pump, which I assume was this.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, coming kind of into resistance, both on like a diagonal side of things, but also, in terms of this, breakdown structure, we like touched on that. We, yeah, kind of swept this little high, and now we're kind of coming back down. I do see like a lot of potential for this chart, and the reason for that is because we now have kind of come into that quarterly range level, and we also have our daily EMAs here, which are still in a bearish structure, showing me that the price is not really ready to do like that significant upside action. However, I do think that we are in a very good spot of making a shift, especially if slash when BTC and ETH are able to make some changes here in the structure to the upside, that is, hopefully. And what I would love to see in that case is that we kind of like, of course, we have here that support as well, that we kind of hold this, do some sort of flipping here. Our EMAs would have to cross in a different direction, which will be bullish. That would look like this. And then we have, of course, our diagonal to break, and then eventually our mid-range. But I could see some sort of like play where we have a lower time frame bottoming structure here, where we kind of, yes, this is also very beautiful. Let me
Yeah.
scroll to load everything, because you can see here that we are making an attempt of crossing the lower time frame structure bullish, which is the first time since September, beginning of September. So I would really love to see this hold here, and then together, of course, with the whole market as a whole kind of putting in a bottom. But then also, I assume, because you said the proposal is still up in the air, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would be a very beautiful trade is like some sort of bottoming structure here. When it starts to show strength, like we kind of long and put our stops below whatever bottom has been forming here. And then we would, of course, need the tailwind of the market as a whole. And then also the fee switch to actually be, put on, switched on, because otherwise this whole pump would be, like anticipation of news that never happened.
Yeah.
So that would definitely have to be like a requirement there. But I think this is shaping up to do something really beautiful. But those stars have to align though. That would be like my take here, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty clean chart to look at. And obviously it's going to be highly influenced by news, but the setup is pretty attractive to kind of look at least anyway.
Especially since we have such a long way to go, right? Because
Yeah.
as I said, those other charts we just looked at, it's like, especially Monero, it's like, okay, we dumped into the mid-range and had like a beautiful bump from there, but I personally didn't have it on my radar. So
Mm.
I'm just here like hindsighting you guys, to
Yeah, you're
show.
like, Am I going to buy the top here, basically? Whereas, we're asking,
Exactly.
is this prime to kind of like have a big leg up?
Yeah, but I think like the reason why it's still good to look at those charts is because, and we have been discussing this a few times during the more educational side of our streams. It's like the reason why we want to look at other charts also when we don't trade them is because we can start recognizing these patterns and see like, oh, something that worked for asset X might look similar to asset Y, which hasn't started the trades that I want to perform on that yet. And that is something that has a lot of possibilities here, I would say.
Definitely. Well, I feel like we could talk through another 30 minutes on a load of this stuff, but
Always.
unfortunately, we don't have another 30 minutes. We're going to wrap things up, but there'll be plenty for us to cover. And I mean, this weekend is going to be really interesting to watch. I
Yes.
think especially keeping a close eye on how BTC kind of performs through all of this.
Yeah.
I guess from you, Dan, if you had to recap really what you're looking for, especially over this weekend at the BTC piece, what would be like the main thing for people tuning in that you'd want to have them keep an eye on, kind of coming into to next week?
Yeah. So like I said, I am long BTC 98 to were my first bids to the yearly open, which have not been hit yet. I think like if we do dump that far, I would want things to be bought up pretty quickly, because if we don't, then that's just weak ass shit at that point, considering we've already made so much travels to the downside.
Yeah.
Um, we want this to hold. I think it is our last shot. And it sounds depressing maybe, but that's just the way I see it. And I think so far we are doing an okay job at trying to save ourselves. Like I said, ETH looks slightly better and slightly more healthy. We have work to do, and it's very clear what that work is. And we just have to see now whether we can get price to get there. But let's hope so that we can, because like Matt explained at the start of the stream, there are some soft tailwinds coming for us. So hopefully we can, yeah, sail on those.
100%. And I think there's going to be, as we start to see more and more discussion around December rate cut, and I think keeping a close eye actually on Fed Watch, which will share the probability that's priced in the markets using the Fed futures rates of a rate cut in December. You'll see probably volatility sway in tandem with that. That's probably going to be one of the biggest things to keep an eye on, and if we get any more economic data out as well. But lots to dig into. One quick note, the next trading spaces that we're going to do is going to be pushed back 1 week, so that all of you can enjoy Thanksgiving without me and Den, unfortunately. But
Sad.
I know, we'll be back on December 5th, and no doubt we'll be ripping through all-time highs across every single thing at that point. So that'll be great. Um,
Absolutely. Yes. Let's all
well,
pray for my lungs, guys. If you want to light a
exactly.
candle, feel free.
Hopium is being directly IV'd into you right now, Den, and everyone
Yay.
watching. All right, we'll see everyone then. Let's make sure, of course, you follow Dentoshi on X, follow at Kraken Pro, at Kraken FX. And if you haven't already signed up for a Kraken account, what the hell are you waiting for? Go do it. Even if you want to just go in and play around with the charting. We'll have the replay come out very soon. Thanks again, Dan, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.